Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. I am super excited to give you 4 must-do tips for when you're putting in an offer for an investment property. Then I'll tell you a story about how I learned those 4 tips, right? So, first of all, the first thing you got to do is make sure that you have the right real estate agent, the one that works for you. There's lots of part-time real estate agents, full-time, successful ones, not so successful ones. Um, your family member is one, your best friend is one, your coworker is one, all terrific people. But the key is finding the one that's going to do what you want them to do. They're terrific to give you market rates. They're terrific to tell you what the comps are, especially the ones that really knows the area, that are doing it full time. They really know what's going on. But are they willing to do what you want them to do? Are they willing to put in the offer that you want them to put in? So that's the one you want. You want somebody that's not going to worry so much about their reputation in the community versus what's best for you. So that's number 1. Number 2, get to know the seller. So if you have a good agent who is very good at talking and getting to know the people, they are going to work on getting to know the seller's agent and trying to say, okay, hey, what do you think about this seller? What's going on? Because your goal is to find as much information out as possible from the seller, right? Are the seller downsizing, upsizing? Do they have they're just elderly couple, or are they trying to, build a family and they're just young? And do they have access, a lot of money sitting around and they don't really need to sell? Or are they desperate to sell because they want to buy something else or they want to do something different? And that way you can get a gauge on what their timeline is. So that's very important. Get to know the seller, right? That's number 2. Number 3, be uncomfortable. When you're coming up with the price, come up with the price that you're like, oh, that's uncomfortable. Or definitely, if your agent is uncomfortable, that means you're in the right track, right? There's comps. This is what you can do, and this is what it is. And the agent will be full of information on what it's sold for before. But you got to pay attention and think about what the market is, how badly you want the deal, how badly the seller wants to sell. And you know what? Based on the seller situation, maybe it's not just the money. Maybe you can come up with some terms that would help with that. So maybe the seller wants the money, that needs that amount, but is willing to do terms that are favorable to you, because terms makes a difference on if you're going to buy something and buy it right? So it's always about buying it right. That's when you make the money, is when you buy. If you buy it right, you thrive. If you buy it wrong, you die. So it's very important to make sure that the price you come up with makes you a little uncomfortable, and definitely makes your real estate agent uncomfortable. So now, the 4th thing is you got to ask. You got to ask. You don't ask, you don't get. So, worst case, you ask and the seller says no. Okay? If you still want the property, now you know the baseline and you can always keep going up. But you can never go down once you go up. So you want to make sure you ask, right? So, with that said, the very first home I ever invested in, I owned a primary home, and I'd only owned it for about a month. I owned a primary home. I've only owned it for maybe a year or so, because shortly after we bought the home, my ex-husband and I, we got a divorce. Now I'm talking shortly, like we moved in and then a couple of months later, we were getting a divorce. And initially my ex-husband's like, sell the house. Well, there was no equity in the house. So, and at the time I was so broken, I thought I would never be able to buy another home. Are you kidding? So I fought and fought to get this home. I was broke, didn't have a job. I was a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids. That's a whole nother story, right? And I will put up a backstory about how I got to this point in another video. If you guys want, you let me know if you want that. In the meantime, I had my friend who is now my husband, but he was a great friend of mine, and he was super smart, and he had done a couple of, he bought his own home and then sold and got his own home and blah, blah, blah. So he knew a lot more than I did, but somehow I decided I'm going to buy a house because all of a sudden I had a HELOC, which I didn't know what that was. But I figured it out that, the bank is willing to give you some money of your own house, from your house. And so I was like, all right, let's try using that. So we go looking, and we run across an agent who was a brand new agent. He was in financial services of some sort, and now he's just adding real estate into his portfolio. So we're like, great, he's new, but he's a go-getter. I really liked him. And he was willing to work with us and do what we wanted. So he had brought us this house. It was for $375,000 at the time, and it was an older neighborhood, beautiful, bigger yards. For Vegas, bigger yards means like half an acre, but it was an older neighborhood where prominent people used to live, but now it's normal people live, right? It's just an older house. And it was like, I don't really want to pay $375,000 for an old home. And so we said, okay, that's not going to work. But 2 months later, he comes back to us and says, hey, it went down to $350,000 because the woman that owned the home, who had passed away, her daughter got the house, and she wanted to sell it, and the person living in it, which was like a cousin or somebody, he was upset that he was being kicked out. So he decided to take a hammer to the house. He literally took a hammer to the house, the toilet tank, and let the water run. The windows, he broke those. Tile on the floor, he went to the corners where the 4 tiles meet and broke them. So you couldn't just replace 1 tile. You'd have to replace 4. The ceiling holes, countertops were completely broken. I mean, it was a mess as far as I knew. It looked like a mess. I know nothing about houses, so I'm just like, okay. And we just happened to know a guy at the time who said, oh yeah, you could, he's a contractor, and he could redo that for $20,000. I know nothing. That makes sense. I have $60,000 line of equity at the time. Okay, sounds good. And so we said, all right, well, let's look at putting in an offer. Well, at $350,000 and the house could sell for $375,000, that doesn't have much of a margin. So we said, well, what are we going to offer? So this is where the importance of knowing the seller came into play. So we find out, because the agent for the seller was very, very talkative and really enjoyed talking. So my agent, who did a great job listening, found out that it's a young lady, and she is in a hurry to buy a condo. And she needed this money to buy the condo. And she could barely handle the fact that her mom has passed away. She didn't want to deal with all this. So we're like, all right, that's a good sign. And I can't remember if we figured out how much the condo was going to be, but somehow we figured out something, and we sat down and said to our agent, all right, we're going to put an offer. I'm thinking like, well, $300,000, right? That's, no clue, no concept of what's the right number. And my now husband, my friend at the time, says, no, I think we should put in an offer of $150,000. And I could tell that the agent jaw dropped about the same time my jaw dropped. Like, what? Did I hear that right? 150,000, and they're asking 350. And my husband's like, yeah, I think that's what we should offer. We're like, okay, that makes me uncomfortable. And my thoughts, worst case, they'll say no. So we put in the offer. But thankfully, it's because we knew the situation with the seller. We had an agent that was working hard for us, and we were willing to get uncomfortable. And then the fourth, we asked. So guess what happened? We hear back from them a couple days later, and it came back with 164,000, blah 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 blah. Who cares? I just remember it was around $164,000. And I was like, are you kidding me? Yeah, we'll take it. Went from 350 to 146,000, and we know we can sell it for 350. So that's what happened. We ended up, I had the right agent, thankfully, who was willing to do what I needed to do, what I wanted him to do, which is find out what the seller's motivation is, do what we ask, and wasn't worried about his reputation in the community, right? And did what was best for his client. We got uncomfortable with the price, and we asked. In the meantime, we got a $350,000 home, right? Finished. And I'm just being conservative because we could have gotten it for $375, but I'm just saying $350. And we bought it for $164. So even if I messed up a ton in between, I know that I'm at least not going to lose money. So, like I said it before, I'm going to make videos of backstory of how I got there, but also I'll make subsequent videos of the financing debacle that I went through to learn how to do all this, as well as the construction side and all the things I learned, and what we ended up selling it for, and how all the numbers penciled out, right? That's what I want you guys to see and learn. And then there's going to be little side stories and things that are just little tidbits that I learned that nobody told me. And I had to learn the hard way. And I'm really hoping that these videos will give you these little nuggets. I mean, they're like really important nuggets that will help you figure out how to do this and not have to go through what I went through. And hopefully, give you a jump start, give you a head start on how to look for deals and how to make deals happen. So this is just one deal, my first deal. And I was hooked. Once I heard the numbers of I can sell for $350 to $375, and I'm about to buy it for $164, I was hooked. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So subscribe and like this video so you can see all the other ones I'm going to do. And hopefully we can, move forward, teach you more things. And if you tell me questions you have, then I can gear towards all that. What I also am going to do is interview all my other colleagues and all my other amazing investors that are way better than I am and has so many different experiences of the same issues, right? It's all the same issues, but there's so many different ways to deal with it and so many different ways to structure it that there's so much to learn. And if you can learn from the best, then you can pick and choose which one works for your deal at that moment. You're like ahead of the game, way faster than everybody else that's just trying to do it on their own. So I'm really hoping that this will help you, and hopefully you will come back and we can go through and figure out what you need so I can get the answers for you and give you the guidelines. Okay? Talk to you guys later. Have a good day.